I'm Cynthia Hutchison, and I want to welcome you to the new normal, getting back to work with COVID ClearPass today. ClearPass is what we'll be talking about today. We've been doing this series now for about 3 months, talking with our member companies about technologies, about transformational issues that are giving us new opportunities to get back to work. Our businesses have been given a bit of a green light to get back to work, but with a lot of different rules, guidelines, and processes to ensure workers stay healthy and safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now we have the free COVID ClearPass app from Red Level, and it'll help organizations fulfill many of these new safety protocols. So today, as our guest, we have Jack LaPan, Director of Products at Red Level. Hi, Jack. Welcome.
Thank you, Cynthia. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here, indeed. So this is one of our leading tech service partners for small to mid-sized companies, and we really like to work with people like this because these organizations are transforming things more rapidly than some of even our bigger companies. Jack's going to talk to us today about a new tool, COVID ClearPass. I don't know why I have a hard time saying that, Jack. COVID ClearPass. His company has developed this to help people get back to work while preventing the spread of the virus. So tell me a little bit about how this came to be and why did Red Level decide to build this tool?
Yeah, so, it really started out of our own necessity. We needed a tool to be able to track the self-help declaration forms that are required by the state when entering a business. The other thing is we really wanted to be able to manage capacity because now we also have capacity limits. So if our office could have 100 people, now we might only be able to have 20 people. So we really needed a way to have a systematic way of tracking that, but also make it easy for our users, our staff, our visitors to have a good experience so it didn't seem like a burden. And because we have a strong development arm, they were able to create this application in just a couple of weeks for us. And what we found was that many other clients of ours were also struggling with this problem. They were using handwritten forms, which we all know the risk of that. You don't want paper information spread around, especially when it has potentially HIPAA-related content on it. Some were using spreadsheets, but ultimately it was just it was chaos for most of them. So Red Level decided, how about we give it away to our clients for free? And then we also do a lot of work with nonprofits, and we said, well, what about nonprofits too? And then ultimately the organization said, well, let's just take a step back here, because there's really no organization on this planet that is thriving unless you're Amazon or something like that. And even if you work for a large organization like that, at an individual level, we're all struggling with the uncertainty. And so Red Level said, let's give it away to everybody for free. And that's really how it came about. And the response has been fantastic. And I would say the biggest objection that I get, Cynthia, is, okay, Jack, what's the hook? What am I going to have to pay after year one? And I said, there's no hook. This is our way of giving back to the community. And by the way, maybe we'll meet some new companies, new people along the way. So that's kind of how it all started.
Wow, that's really very exciting, and I'm glad. I didn't know all of this before we talked just now, so I knew that I knew you were doing it for free. I don't think I realized the genesis of it and how that has evolved into something that's going to be available to everybody.
Yeah.
So it is a giving back, and you're right. Nobody's doing well. There are companies that are doing very well economically because they have a unique service that fits this moment in time. But I think that the level of angst we all carry around with us every day, it varies from individual to individual. But the level of anxiety of whether or not you can have 4 people on your patio for a book club, whether or not you can meet friends for dinner, all of those things factor into just weighing us down. And this is a way to alleviate some of that.
Yeah. If you've ever read the book, Start With Why, from Simon Sinek. He talks about when we help other people, and even when people see you helping other people, it releases good chemicals in our body, right? So it makes us feel good. And I can say that of all my years in technology consulting, I've never felt this good about how we're helping organizations right now.
So can I ask you, I don't need a hard number, but are a lot of people participating now and taking advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, so because it's a free offering, we don't have any tracking technology on it, so we don't know exactly how many people are actually using it. Now, there are some instances where organizations will come to us and say, hey, Jack, the video is awesome. You guys did a great job on building the admin manual, but we just don't have the bandwidth right now. Can you just do that for us? So we know those people. And then we also have organizations like the Detroit Institute of Arts, where they have totally customized the application to do more than just, the self-help declaration. They have like a security screen and so forth. So we know those people, but because it's open to anybody, if you can just download and install it yourself. You don't even need our help. But I think the last number was around 2,500 organizations, and it's growing daily. There's not a day that goes by that I don't get 2 to 3 calls that range from, all across the United States. And we're getting a lot more calls from Florida, Houston, California now, calls from London. So it's just spreading. And, we've done a little bit of marketing on it, but really it's become word of mouth. So it's, if I had to guess, there's probably at least 1,000 to 2,000 organizations using it.
It's really thrilling. No wonder you feel so good about this as a product development. And when you develop a product that people like, it always feels good. But when you can give something away that's really transformational. So I want to talk to you about the transformations. So I know you're not fully back to work in the office yet, but how is this helping Red Level? Just walk me through your company. How is it going to help you with your daily operational things? Explain it.
Well, we are an essential business. So there are people that are going into the office, but our leadership is fantastic and making it flexible, because it's not just about contracting COVID. It could be about people don't have healthcare, or not healthcare, but childcare. And so the organization has been fantastic for our employees to give them that flexibility. There are people that are going to the office. And so we're currently using ClearPass. So when we do go in the office, it's expected that we pre-register because, so if we can only have 20 people in the office and 21 people decide to show up, now I just drove from Brighton to the office and I can't come in, right? So you can pre-register with the application. And then the day that you check in, you also have to, fill out the self-declaration form. And what's nice about that is you get your spot reserved, you check in, you have no symptoms, but if for some reason you do have a symptom, then it's going to say that you can't come in. And it immediately sends an email to our HR team, and it also shows up on their dashboard. So there's a dashboard that you can get on a mobile device that shows where the alerts were, meaning if somebody was suspected of having COVID. And so, and then what you do with that information after is important, because if this person was in the office for the past week and now they self-declare that they have a symptom, what do you do now? Is it your company's practice to ask them to be tested? Do you put them on a prohibited list? So there's a lot of things that happen on the back end, even when you're using this system. But just imagine if you were using a paper form, an Excel spreadsheet. How do you manage all that data? It's impossible.
Well, when you talked about if you drive in from Brighton and you're number 21 and there's only 20 people allowed in the office. So this is almost like a pre-reservation, like reserving, I'm going to be in the office on Thursday, reserve my spot.
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
yeah, so it's got a capacity component as well as, how are you feeling today component. So I always have to like walk through the entire process. So, okay, somebody, it's on their phone. It's on their phone. Do we all log in from home every morning? Just mornings you're going to the office? Are you asking people to log in who work for you, period, just so you can make sure you know their health status, or is it just when they're coming into the office?
That's a great question. And we've been thinking about even people that have worked from home, is it advantageous for us to track that? And that brings up an interesting point that we haven't yet determined how we're going to manage that yet. But currently, we ask people to do this before they come in the office for a couple different reasons. One, we don't want them to drive in if they can't come into work. And two, if they do have some sort of symptom, and if they were carrying COVID, for example, we don't want the exposure to happen within the office. So it minimizes risk for us, and it minimizes undue travel time for our employees.
And all of the features, I want to kind of think through. So I know that well, you can tell me the features. Give me a list of the features that make this really robust, because this is a strong offering. And I think that its flexibility and its attention to detail is really unique. Yeah. I know you've got a self-health. So you've got the self-health declaration form.
Yes.
And then what?
Well, there's a couple components, but here's what we also know based on our research is keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate this, because we're dealing with all different types of people that have maybe never, used this type of application before. So simplify it. Simplify it for the users, simplify it for the administrators. And that's exactly what we've done. We've made it extremely easy for everybody. But you have your check-in, which is your, CDC, recommended questions. Do you have any symptoms? Do you have a temperature, right? We're all familiar with, have you traveled? And then the pre-registration, which we've talked about. And then we also have a section for prevention tips. So, as things develop with COVID and more that we learn about it, we want to make sure we're getting that message out to our employees. So if there's something changed, like we have to wear a face mask now, these types of things, we want to make sure if they're using this app every day, then we have their attention. Why not put the content there? Because I don't know about you or the others listening, but I don't need another email, because I'm probably not going to read it, okay? So there's that component. And then you have the other component of news. So, okay, there's a new order in Michigan. How do we make sure that all of our employees know that? Well, there's a simple way to click on company news, and you can get what the current news is. You can put a link to the article. When I do the demos, I even have a company news in there that says the Lions are going to the Super Bowl, and everybody chuckle out of that. And you don't even have to be from Michigan to get that joke, but. But the other thing is, so you have that company news, and then you have your check-in. So a lot of organizations, especially manufacturing organizations, they want evidence that they've been checked in. So HR on the back end does have a list of who's checked in and whether or not there are any alerts. But if I'm walking through the door, I can show that I've checked in because it tells the location, the time, and my name on the actual application. All right. And then we are working on, there's a couple versions of ClearPass. There's the one that's built in Microsoft 365, and now we have a web version. And so now what we're working on with a couple different organizations is generating a QR code. So when I check in and I get approved, it's going to generate a QR code that then can be scanned by an access control system that now lets me into the building.
Interesting.
So when you talk about agility, the platform is really built in a way that it can, do the simple things that we needed to do, which is let's make sure that people are getting into the office safely. And if we need to address any concerns, we have an easy way to do that. But now people are saying, I have one company here in Michigan that's saying they're spending $1 million a month on having security guards do this process.
Oh,
And so, and they have several locations, but they believe that they can reduce that cost down considerably, even with implementing thermal scanners, which will also integrate with the app.
so that brought up a couple questions that I've been thinking about. One is that what was the source? And I'll just throw, did you use the governor's orders as a source? Like, what's the data platform, data acquisition you use to start to build this out? In other words, like, how do you pull decisions to develop it exactly as it is? Because we get updates from the governor twice a week sometimes on new things that have to happen. Is that embedded into it? Do you update it?
Yeah.
Or is it updated through news?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is an agile platform that we can change as we need, and we do provide updates. So there's you just run a script and it updates your application. But as I mentioned, the first version of ClearPass was built in Office 365 or Microsoft 365,
Right.
which there's a lot of governance and compliance that you get from Microsoft while using that. And what a lot of organizations love about that is that the data's in their environment. I'm not hosting your data.
I see.
And so they really appreciate that. And the users are still just using the same login that they would use for their email or their OneDrive or whatever it is that you're using in Office 365. There's no change to the user. And if those organizations out there that are using Microsoft Teams, we've even embedded the application to work inside of Microsoft Teams. So you could be in your Teams app, click ClearPass, and the form comes up.
Interesting. So we use Teams every morning at 8:45 because some of us are remote, some are in the office. Every morning at 8:45, our leadership team logs in together. So we could use ClearPass and at that moment be identifying where we are, answer our self-health declaration form, all of those things every day.
Absolutely. And if you're in HR and you could also put your dashboard for those individuals that need access, because the dashboard is only for HR professionals, not for everybody. But you can group all of that into one view inside of Microsoft Teams. You could have your data, you could have your dashboard, you could have your app. So it's a way to consolidate the work that you're doing into one view.
I really like your focus on simplicity and not complicating anybody's lives. One of the things we've gone through internally is, the level of conversation we've had about it it's a lot for a small organization. We've had a lot of conversation about how to do it, what to use, whether or not to have temperatures. And I wanted to ask you about that. You've referenced HIPAA. One of the things that I always worry about a little bit is I think once you start taking temperatures, you have a HIPAA issue, or is that not accurate? I don't know.
Well, I'm not a legal person. I'm the product guy here, but from how I understand it, there are some organizations that are fine with collecting that information, and they put it inside of the storage for the ClearPass, which in our case is SharePoint. And then there's some organizations that do not want to collect that data. But Microsoft, the Microsoft tenant, they have HIPAA compliance. The app itself, because of the way that it's built, when I actually submit on the form from ClearPass.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to the data source, which is SharePoint. It's encrypted. So the data is encrypted in transit, so as it's moving, and when it's at rest, it's also encrypted. And we've also put in another layer of security. Even if you found the link to where this data is stored, which most likely you would never find unless somebody provided it to you, you still will not be able to access that data unless we've set up a certain permission view so that you could see it. So we've done a lot to secure this information because we understand how important it is.
You really have. This is really like I said, everything that I know about it is it's just, I can only say it's robust. It's simple and yet robust, which is a beautiful combination. When you have enough to get the job done properly, but the ease on the user is really phenomenal.
Yeah.
The reporting and analytics you talked about a little bit. And so push notifications, what would generate a push notification? What circumstance might create that?
Well, really, the sky is the limit. I mean, some organizations use it for pre-registration. So say if like museums, this is very common. If somebody pre-registers, they just don't let them pre-register. There needs to be an approval process. So if Jack LaPan reserves a space for tomorrow, it goes off to a couple people, they have to approve it, and then the security team then approves it, and then it allows them to register. So that's one type of alert. The other alert is once I register for a space, it will send me an email communication letting me know that my space is reserved. It'll also show up on my dashboard on my app. Another alert would be if I self-declared and say I said I traveled internationally in the last 14 days, it would not allow me to come into the office and immediately would send an email to the HR representative letting them know that there's a potential issue here and that they need to follow up with me.
Interesting. Have you worked with companies that, and I know you don't know who all's using it, so it's not a trick question. I'm just curious, where there isn't really, I mean, one of the things we're all coming out of this with is, the governor's orders tell us every organization needs a COVID-19 preparedness and response plan and somebody managing that plan. There are a lot of small companies that don't have an HR kind of person. So
Yeah.
This is a way for them to have a plan without really putting, I mean, there are companies with 5 employees where there's nobody who's going to really manage that. So they now have a system that just make sure that they are complying with the governor's rule without pulling somebody off their day job.
Certainly. And this makes it easy for them. So, I mean, you have to have somebody that's going to be responsible. You don't necessarily, even if you have 5 people, you don't want everybody knowing if somebody has a symptom or not, or
Right.
has COVID, right? There's some things that we have to do to protect our employees. And so you can designate who you want that person to be in the application. And it can even be by site level. So for example, you can have up to 2,000 different sites. And so what is a site? Okay, it could be a building, or it could be your building with floors. Some people are using building, floors, and departments. And if you're wondering why, it's because they want to be able to track where these people were. They were on this floor, or they were in this department, in case there is some sort of exposure. This dashboard will allow them to kind of trace back and see who else was in that area when they were. So yeah.
This is a wonderful development. So I'm going to veer a little bit because one of the reasons when we first went into the quarantine mode and we all worked from home, I found that at Automation Alley, my role and that of most of our team, we were handling calls that were about, how do we get involved in PPE? Then after about 2 weeks of that, the calls turned into how do I get PPP? How do I get payroll protection?
Right.
So, our role as a straddling government, academia, and industry, our role kind of had people calling us with those questions. So we have to, then almost like the spigot turned on at about 5 weeks out, when we were 5 weeks into quarantine, the calls started to come in say, how do I get back to work? How do I find some way back? What's my path forward? And that's about the time this kind of development would have really been, probably about the time we were developing this. As that's rolled out, my observation has been that we're seeing many of the COVID mitigation strategies are actually long-term paths into a more digital future. So I found it rather ironic that I kind of tease about it, but I said Automation Alley's biggest challenge in getting people to really embrace the Industry 4.0 digitization of their manufacturing or industrial facility has been inertia. And now with COVID and these mitigation requirements, that inertia is no longer an option. So people have to do something. They have to do ClearPass. They have to do something. Do you see that as a leverage into more companies really embracing technology as a part of their continued growth, as opposed to just this one step?
Absolutely. I mean, when I think at some level, every organization had to learn how to work remotely. And, we've worked with organizations that was foreign to them. They didn't ever think that this would ever be the case. And now, this becomes the norm. And although it may not be 100% this way, we believe that there's always going to be that element of work from home. And people are, I've talked to companies like Blue Cross, who said their productivity has increased with people working from home. And I don't know about you, but I work a lot more hours because I'm not on an airplane. I'm not traveling into the office every day. And so I think that there's going to be a major shift, even beyond what we've experienced today. What we've experienced today is, okay, how do we get the communication tools out? And how do we, share files without dealing with the stresses of a VPN? But I think what you're also going to see is there's going to be additional innovations. So this application is just an example. So if you are an organization that has Microsoft 365, you see what we did with workflow, application development, as well as dashboarding, like getting good data so people can make good decisions. This is not a big project. It was 3 weeks, and we were working around the clock. Don't get me wrong there, but we knew that there was a deadline. But the whole point is, when companies are realizing that if we can streamline a process like this, why do we have these other forms over here? Why do we have these paper forms? Why do we have these random Word documents that I have to circulate? People are starting to understand that we can automate this and allow people to do what they're supposed to do, not spend 70% of their time trying to find the email, trying to find the right file, trying to figure out the form that I need to fill out. Make it easy for people to do the right thing. And that's really our motto. And that's what technology is all about. But people don't adopt technology. I can't go to them and say, hey, use Power Apps and SharePoint. They're going to say, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't have the time.
Right.
When you say to them, this is going to change the way that you track your manufacturing process, now you have their ears. They don't care what's behind it. And that's the difference, right? We talk business and then help them develop a solution that's going to impact their business.
That's a great kind of final thought on this, because I think what we're seeing is this transformation where things that couldn't be done. I'll give you an example. I talked to a chancellor of a college, and he told me that they were convinced that of their 1,600 courses, there were like 30 that could be truly offered online. That was a year ago. In 10 days, all 1,600 went online because COVID happened,
Yeah.
And suddenly it's kind of okay. And he said, yes. Are there some that would be much better in person? There are, but right now that's why you have, so that's that we've been forced into a situation to think differently. And when you take an app like yours or a development like yours, you take the COVID pass, you look at your ClearPass, and now you have an opportunity to just help people understand this solved this huge problem for you. So many of your business problems will be solved in similar fashion down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, there's a lot of things that, people made assumptions about that we can't do this. And it's amazing. You never want your technology adoption program to be a pandemic. All right. Because even if it is, you're going to have some mess on the back end.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that we really do to help organization is, okay, now let's put some governance around this. Where do we share files? How do we transmit data? And so many organizations are now in that spot where, okay, we're using all these different technologies, but I don't know what Steve over there is using compared to what Linda over there is using.
Right.
So now we have to herd the cats a little bit now, right? If you didn't have a strategy, now we have to come up with that strategy. And that's a lot of what we've been helping organizations with.
Thank you very much, Jack. Thanks for your time. Thank you for your commitment to this project. And finally, if any company is interested in using this, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can just go to redlevel.com and all the information you'll need will be out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, ClearPass. Thank you, Red Level. You all have a great day now. Thanks for